Welcome, everyone. I'm Tammy Mastroberte, founder of Elevated Existence and publisher and editorial director of the award-winning Elevated Existence magazine. Joining us today is Kevin Gianni. He's the co-founder of the blog Renegade Health, and he's author of 6 different books on natural health, diet, and fitness, including his newest, recently published by Hay House, called Kale Coffee, A Renegade's Guide to Health, Happiness, and Longevity. He's also produced over 900 YouTube videos that have more than 10 million views, all around health and diet and fitness. So Kevin, welcome to the Elevated Existence audience, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. I have to say, I know your newest book, which is Kale Coffee, started with your own journey, or kind of like a quest to understand, what really is healthy, what really promotes longevity. There's so many different facts and diets and plans and information that changes every second. And you actually started this because you were a raw food vegan, and then you got sick, and it wasn't really working. So can you kind of explain that to people on how you started realizing, that may not have been a fit for you?
That's correct. Yeah. For me, I was always into fitness, but I was never fully into nutrition. So to give you an example, in high school, I played football, basketball, and tennis. And before our tennis matches, my doubles partner and I would eat a Twinkie, a pack of Twinkies, and drink a Mountain Dew before our tennis matches. So, nice. I mean, so that's kind of my view of nutrition, but I was always into fitness. So, fast forward to after college, a friend of mine gave me some MP3s that I started listening to, and they were MP3s of David Wolfe, who is a well-known nutritionist.
Right.
And I was just blown away. I just never really thought about nutrition in that way. I never thought about some foods could actually have more nutrition than others, and so I just really became totally head-on interested in this. And so I went full into veganism. I went into raw food, and I did it, and it was great to start.
Right.
and it was good for a while. It was good for a few years. I felt really good. I looked really good. I was in my mid-20s. It was great. I was able to run fast and faster than I had ever done before, because I was a long-distance runner at the time. And then I started to get some hints that maybe it wasn't working so well. My energy levels dropped a little bit. I wasn't able to run as fast. I was getting a little more anxious. I had some, I would fly off. I would get a little agitated, at situations that I normally wouldn't. And so that kind of started to continue to decline to the point where I had to, go to a doctor and see what was happening. And it turned out that the diet really wasn't, working for me as I thought it was.
Right. Now, the book kind of starts off where you're literally, you get into an RV with your wife, and you're kind of on this journey trying to figure out, what's good. And what's interesting, I think, about it is that, as I said, there's so many different diets. You hear gluten is bad for you. You hear, you should be on a paleo diet because grains are bad for you. And there's so many different things. And it also seems like the one minute the universe is saying, everybody's like, you need to do this. This is the way to go. But then they find something wrong with it. And you're like, no, we didn't want you to do that. Now you need to do this. So it gets nuts. But what I think I gather from your book, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that everybody does not belong on the same type of eating program or diet or way of eating. It really kind of works on a person-by-person basis that they need to try and kind of experiment and figure out. And it all comes down to our genes. Is that kind of the basis of it?
Well, we all come from different places. Not all of us are from, one area of the world. And so if you think about it that way, genes have over time, adapted. And so, we're not totally different. I mean, we're all still human. So it's not like, your genes are radically different than yours are different than mine, but they are different. And so we have to adjust for that. And the challenge with most diet gurus or diet experts is that they're telling you, this is the diet that works for me, so it should be the diet that works for you. And
right.
And it just doesn't work. And so what I've found is that knowing your own personal, blueprint, with genes and blood tests and knowing like where you stand is the best indicator or the best way to even decide what type of diet works for you. And it's amazing because the best part about it is that, I don't claim to be anti anything in terms of diet. So I mean, you can, if you're a vegan and your blood tests and your genes are showing that everything is great, then continue to be a vegan by all means. Like what a great way to impact the planet by being a vegan. That's amazing. Or if you're paleo and everything's working, then great. But what happens, when I think people make the biggest mistake is that they think that they need to continue to have a certain diet, but it's actually causing them harm, like it did for me. I mean, I've been through the experience, so I know what it means, and then I know how it feels. So that's where you can get really smart about how you feel, and how your diet relates with you instead of how someone else's diet relates to you.
Right. Now, so in terms of genes or blood tests, where would we actually start? Is it something that we'd need to get genes tested, or is it something where you can start by looking at your blood work and seeing, what might be a problem there?
Yeah, the good news about this stuff is that the internet is here.
Yeah.
And I don't know how people would have done this 20 or 30 years ago, because what you can get your blood tests and you can search markers, whatever type of markers that you search for, and you wouldn't want to get just a regular blood panel. There's on Renegade Health, you can actually search, and we have listed some of the panels that you'd want to get.
Right.
So I'm not going to go into those specifically, but you can get all these different tests, and you can actually search and find just trusted sources that will give you indication and whether you're in a good place or you're in a bad place. And it's amazing that the internet exists, and we're able and allowed to, actually, to be honest with you, because some regulations seem to be getting tighter, even though they shouldn't.
Yeah.
And then with genes, you can do a similar thing. You can get your 23andMe tests done, and there are certain websites you can go to get them run and see what mutations you may or may not have. Now, those are a little bit more difficult, and it's probably better to find a functional medicine practitioner who can help you interpret those.
Right.
But even then, I mean, you can get yourself off on the right foot. I mean, you can tell if you metabolize caffeine fast or slow. You can tell if you metabolize stress fast or stress hormones fast or slow, and that'll give you an indication of the type of person you are and the things that you should or should not be doing.
Right. It's so amazing to me that all of that is available. But it makes sense, because when you think about it, I mean, you and I could be on the same diet and be having a completely different experience. You could be amazing and have energy and all your blood work is beautiful, and I could be exhausted and, have high cholesterol. I know in the book you say processed foods out for everybody. It doesn't matter. Going on a high carb and a high fat diet, not a good idea for everyone. But are there any other kind of universal rules that you have found, no matter what gene or blood type or anything like that, somebody might have? Are there kind of some lays of the land that anybody can follow?
Yeah, I mean, one of the ones that even continued to shock me as I was doing research for the book is this very simple law of like, you can have two of the same food next to each other. They look exactly the same. So you can have one steak that's from conventional farming, just wherever, Central Valley, California here, or you can have a steak that's grass-fed, grass-finished, and they can be two totally different foods.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like it's almost like the apples to orange, like cliche, right? You know what I mean? Like you could have an apple and orange, it's the same thing. Once they look exactly the same, they both look like, a T-bone, but one is high in omega-6 oils, can be inflammatory. The other one, the ratio between omega-6 and omega-3 is perfect, and it can be anti-inflammatory. I mean, crazy, like insane. The same with wine, the same with coffee, the same with all these things that some people just, most health experts will just patently say, that's bad. Don't do that. Well, what do you mean it's bad? Is the science that you're reading, is that from wine that's been, grown conventionally? Or is it wine that's been grown with dry farming practices where the grapes are healthy, the vineyards are healthy, lower sugar content, higher nutrient content? I mean, we can't compare these things. And so we have to take back some of our statements about some of these things and say, well, maybe we don't know. And I think that's a very powerful positioning to be in, because now we can look at things in a much more open perspective and say,
Right.
hey, you know what? Yeah, you can do some of that, because that doesn't matter as much as some of the things that really matter, which is, no processed food. I mean, it's so
Right.
simple it almost is annoying, because, you write a whole book and then suddenly you're like, wait a minute, no processed food? Is that like, that's like the highest of high things that you can do for your diet.
Right.
Because almost every diet in the beginning works because of that fact. Because
Yes.
almost every diet removes processed food. That's it.
Yes, absolutely. So in terms of making choices, whatever food we are eating, we just want to make sure that number one, it's a high quality. So we would want to go with organic. We would want to go with grass fed meat and things like that. I know wild fish is something also. So in terms of when we do discover the different things that do work for us, it's about the quality of the food that we're eating. Non-GMO and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
awesome. Now, I know another thing that you spoke about was salt, and I know a lot of people kind of get salt sometimes gets a bad rap in terms of salt. And obviously, if we're not eating processed foods, it's not as big of a deal because they're so loaded with salt. But what is the deal with salt? Is it good? Does it matter the type of salt that we're using? I mean, I know I use Himalayan salt and usually Celtic sea salt, I think, but that doesn't have any iodine in it. So salt sometimes is confusing as well. What did you find out about that?
Yeah, with salt, I mean, my conclusion with salt was really surprising, because I was not going for the conclusion that I came to with it. I thought that sea salt was just going to be, the pinnacle of salt, and that would be the one that you would eat. And I thought that you would actually have to limit the amount of salt that you had in your diet. And yes, while you do have to limit the amount of salt in your diet, you can't eat 30 tablespoons in a day.
Right.
Um, the amount of salt, 2 tablespoons a day, that is kind of like the ceiling, is really difficult to reach if you're not eating processed foods. So
Yes.
if you're eating that level, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, you can eat a decent amount of salt. Now, the other thing about it is that there are tiny amounts of trace minerals in sea salt,
Right.
almost to the point where some of it's pretty pure, and the amount of trace minerals in sea salt, I feel, is actually negligible. Um, if you were to say, all right, I eat my sea salt because it's healthier, and then compare it to maybe a piece of kale, you're going to get a lot more trace minerals in some of that, just even in some vegetables that you eat, let
Sure.
alone just what's in the salt. So I can't really say that it's something that you would eat, for health benefit, for that matter, just for the trace minerals.
Right.
But so I think you can actually eat processed salt if you wanted to. I don't think to me, it doesn't seem right, because it actually is processed. So there's the process side, but in terms of the actual chemical side, chemistry side, I don't think it's actually gonna move the needle in terms of your nutrition, the sea salt. But if you have two options, why not choose the one that has a better profile?
Yes.
So yes, so I do eat sea salt, because I don't want to have a processed food.
Right.
But I do think that it's not as important as a lot of health experts like to say it is.
Okay, awesome. And so another thing that kind of hit me was you said one of the biggest and best things we can do for ourselves is start our day with a green smoothie. And I know green juices and green smoothies are everybody's talking about them and about the benefits of them. Is there a difference? Do you recommend a smoothie over actually juicing? And are there different benefits to either one?
Well, there are different benefits to either one. I look at juicing as a supplement to the diet. It's you're concentrating the nutrients in fruits and vegetables, and you're putting them into a juice. I actually have a juice right here. It's right here. So it's a watermelon and beet, and what else is in there? It's the ginger. But so that's I look at that as a supplement to your diet, or as a cleansing tool. Smoothies are more like a food, because you have all the fiber, you have everything in there, and so it's different. But I do both. And I know people say, oh, well, with the juice you take all the fiber out. Well, people are taking extracts, herbal extract supplements. That's the same thing. And so the same doctor, or same guru is saying, all right, you don't drink juice, don't drink like fresh vegetable juice, but you can take this herbal extract,
Right.
it's a concentrated source of that particular nutrient, that herb. So I mean, it's the logic sometimes just isn't there, which is fine. I have my flaws too. So when it comes to green smoothies, I mean, I think the most powerful thing about green smoothies is the study that Victoria Butenko did with for her book Green for Life, where she took, I think, 30 people through 30 days of just green smoothies. And I don't mean just green smoothies like all day. The only thing that they replaced was their breakfast. So they really just had green smoothies for breakfast. That was it.
Okay.
And everything else throughout the day they did. If they're going to have, whatever for lunch, whatever for dinner, they would just do it. They did the blood tests before. They took blood tests before from these individuals, and then afterwards. And each one of them who stuck with the study had lower blood pressure. They had lower blood sugar, because the blood sugars were higher, not like low blood sugar, but lower. They had higher sex drive. They lost weight. All these benefits. So I mean, just that in itself, like just that study of 30, you can use that as evidence that this probably will help you. Additionally, the coolest thing about green smoothies is this: it's a psychological thing, I think. Is that if you have like pancakes for breakfast,
Right.
you make pancake type decisions the rest of the day.
Right.
And that's what happens. You have a green smoothie in the morning, you make green smoothie type decisions. So like you have green smoothie in the morning, you're like, oh wait a minute, like lunch, I'm gonna have a salad. It just feels right. You have pancakes for breakfast in the morning, you're like lunch, you're like, man, give me that BLT, and like with mayonnaise and all this, all these sorts of chips and all that sort of
Right.
thing. So
Is there anything in particular that we should have in the green smoothie to get that effect, or it doesn't really matter?
I mean, for me, my green smoothie is a whole head of lettuce. So I take a big old head of either romaine or red leaf or green leaf or even massive amounts of spinach, and then I take a sweet fruit, maybe like a mango, or I don't really like bananas, but mango, peaches, something like that, and then some berries. So strawberries or blueberries or even tree fruit like cherries or something like that. So high antioxidant fruit, and then I use a little bit of rice protein powder that I put water in, mix it up. It's not a gourmet smoothie, So if you're going to go try this at home, know that it'll taste green, it'll taste a little salady, but that's the kind of green smoothie that I think is better. There's like the gourmet green smoothies that have a lot of coconut oil and all these other additives in it, and I don't think they're necessary. I mean, if you like it, do it, but I just don't think it's that necessary.
Right. Last thing I wanted to ask you about is I know toward the end of the book you actually have kind of a 21 day start for people, and you talk about a plan of it's assess, detox, retox, and repeat. Can you kind of break that down for people as to what those steps actually are?
Yeah. So this is something that came out of just after writing the book. The book is a storybook, and I tell my experiences, and there's science and data kind of weaved in with it. And so at the end of the book, I was like, well, what am I, how am I going to put this in a way that someone can actually take action on it,
Right.
action on something that they learned. So I talked to Reed at Hay House, who's the president of Hay House, and he gave me this idea to have a 21-day jump start, and I was like, awesome, great, I can do this, and I needed to categorize it in some way, and when you're thinking about anything, like you always have to come to a moment of realization that something's actually happening, and that's the assess part. It's like, okay, I don't feel good. Okay, cool. So now you start with that, and so the assessment can be anything too, and so that's a really kind of it's very broad. It can be, I got my blood test back and my cholesterol's high, or I have diabetes. So like there's multiple things that you can do with that. Then you detox. So then you choose a plan that's good for you, whether it's water fasting, which is probably the most difficult, up to just doing a little bit of a elimination diet, removing sugar, caffeine, gluten, all the things that we can look at and say, maybe you shouldn't eat too much of that stuff.
Right.
Remove those from your diet, dairy, soy, and then kind of go through that process. So that's the detox phase. After the detox, what you do is inevitably, anyone, unless you're some sort of robot, you're going to slip away. So you're gonna have the momentum from the cleanse that you did, and then it's going to be good for a while, and then things are going to start to slip through again. And once they do, that's your retox program. That's where you're retoxing. Then you repeat. You go back to start, and you always. So essentially, you're never complete, right? We're never complete until we're we're in the ground, and so you
Right.
kind of just slowly come towards center. So you're gradually getting better each time, and sometimes you'll go through that assess, detox, retox, repeat circle, and you'll go through the same one over and over again. I mean, for me, it used to be corn chips. Like I would just go through this corn chip cycle. I'd be like, okay, I'm not going to eat corn chips again. So they'd be out, and then 3 months later, I'd be eating corn chips. And I'd be like, okay, I'm going to do it again. Go back, go back, go back. And now I'm out of it. So I'm out of it. So even if I have corn chips, it's not a thing. It doesn't become a everyday kind of thing.
Right.
So
Okay.
it's you could start with something basic like that, or you can start with a disease or something that is a lot more a lot more serious.
Right. Right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, well, thank you so much for joining us. And can you just tell people before we sign off, how can they find out more about you, the work that you do, all the research and tips that you offer people?
Absolutely. The best place to find out more about me is kevingianni.com. Kevin Gianni.com. There you'll see the books there, our skincare companies there, all the things that we do. You can get to know a little bit more about me. That's the best place to start, and then you can go to Renegade Health and from there.
Right. So renegadehealth.com is kind of the blog where you offer a lot of info as well.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Congratulations on the book, Kale and
Yeah.
Coffee, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you, of course, to all of our elevated viewers, and we will see you next time.